get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today's no different. I have Lauren Vaughn of Quintessa Marketing. And Lauren, I always like to mention other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And, you know, I do have a Top Women Leaders series. You're a top woman leader. And Andrea Houston was an amazing interview. She runs Artitudes Design, and she has Lead Like a Woman show. Actually, probably be a good fit for her show. So we'll have to tell her. Shout out, Andrea, to you. And also, since it's an agency podcast, there's a couple of cool ones. Kevin Hurrigan started his agency back in 1995, if you can believe it. And he runs Spinia Tech. So hearing his evolution and journey is pretty fascinating. And I like the Todd Tasky one, too, where he pairs private equity with agencies. He helps sell agencies. He's got the Second Bite podcast. So he finds that some of the agencies make more on the second bite than they do on the first. So it's interesting to see his thoughts on valuation of agencies and the agency landscape. So check that out. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We are an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, accountability, and the full execution and production. Lauren, we call ourselves kind of the magic elves that work in the background to make sure it makes it look easy for the host and they could just run their business and have great conversations. You know, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I have found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Lauren Vaughn. She's CEO of Quintessa Marketing. And Quintessa Marketing delivers marketing services for client acquisition to attorneys and law firms. Their services vary all over the board to make sure they get clients for law firms, from web development to SEO to paid advertising to even intake department development and training. Because probably I imagine if law firms aren't answering the phone right, it doesn't matter how good you do your job. Things slip through the cracks. So she does it all. Lauren's a successful entrepreneur. She's grown Quintessa to a 9-figure valuation because of her unique approach that allowed her company to get a large percentage of their leads converted to retainers for lawyers that they work with. So Lauren, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we were chatting a little bit before we hit record, and we'll get into it, but just start off with Quintessa Marketing and what you do.
So Quintessa is a tech-enabled lead generation company. So what we do is we go into the marketplace where you would see a personal injury lawyer advertise, and we go into the marketplace as well under our own brand, and we will get a person who has been injured in an accident, and instead of them getting partnered with maybe a bad attorney, our goal is to partner them with the right attorney and to maximize their compensation. So that is at a high level what we do for the potential client. And then on the flip side, lawyers call me when they need more cases, more volume. So in 24 hours, we turn on the spigot and they're able to start receiving leads overnight.
I want to touch on how you got into this niche of law firms, but why don't we paint the picture of what's going on? Because you started your company when you were in the middle of a divorce.
Yes.
So what was going on before? What were you working on? And then paint the picture. What was going on at that time?
So really to even talk about the start, if you would have told me when I was graduating high school that I would be running a personal injury lead generation, I'd ask what personal injury is. So by trade, I'm a problem solver. So when people come to me with a problem, it really bothers me and I like figuring out a solution. So in 2008, when the economy crashed, I was a junior in college and my friends couldn't even get hired at Target that had graduated. And I had someone who came into AT&T, which is the store I was working at. And they didn't understand how to use their phone. I turned around and sold it back to them and educated them on it. And he said, hey, I want you to come in and be an executive assistant. And he worked in Dallas, which for an Oklahoma girl going down to Dallas, like you've made it. So that was my start. And they ran a personal injury TV commercial company. So I was the gopher. So I would go and get the attorneys, pick them up from the airport. So I got to deal with the largest attorneys in their market pretty much, and really got to sit and listen and hear their problems, what they were experiencing, new marketing. And fast forward, I'd say 6 years later, I was running the company. And then I had my daughter, wanted to move back to Oklahoma. And one of my old clients called and asked if I would come and help set up lead generation at his law firm in Newport Beach. So went and did that. And then I actually ended up running the firm for about a year, started going through a divorce, and it was just too much with a 1-year-old. And so it was, hey, how can I just go ahead and start it here? And so I asked the attorney if I can back into a per lead model instead of you paying me a salary and for all my travel. Let's just see if we can make this work. And it just went off like gangbusters. And so he told a friend, and then a friend told another friend, and that was really the start of how Quintessa started.
So Lauren, did it start off because you really needed the flexibility to take care of your daughter and your life at the time? Because you were flying back and forth or running this whole company, and you're like, was that kind of the start or the thought at that time?
It was for me with my daughter's name is Ruby. And so with Ruby, it was, I didn't want to be the mom that was there a week on, week off. I just didn't want to be that person. And I knew that I was really good in this space. And I wanted to see, like, how can I leverage? Because I was going to go in and sell real estate with my mom, but it didn't excite me. And this, I knew it. I knew how to master it and how to solve the problems. And so it was, how can I be able to have enough fuel to be mom and to also put food on the table and provide for her and be present? So really, that's what it started out of.
That's difficult. One or the other, both of them separately are difficult.
Yes.
Raising kids and starting a business.
Yes.
And then you're basically jumping into both at the same time.
Yes. It was, my husband now says, I don't think you would know what to do if you didn't have a million spinning plates. So we're pregnant right now. I'm 7 months pregnant. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have 4 kids combined, but this is our first together. So we're just taking it on again. It's a little bit different at 37 than 30 though.
The Brady Bunch?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that goes to, what do you have to set up in your business now? Because you're going to be having a baby, right? And you've probably prepped for this, right? So what did you have to set up, or what do you have to set up so that when you do have to step away, things are running?
So it's really different from a founder CEO perspective as just a CEO, because as a founder, I'm the subject matter expert. So because I've been doing it for so long. So when we bring on new VPs, they try to sometimes reinvent the wheel. And so what we've really gone back to is we're going back to the basics. So we're going to put Lauren's mind on paper. You're going to follow the guideline, and then we want you to add things in addition to, but we can't take away our fundamental things that made us Quintessa. So right now, that's really what we've been working on, is getting everyone on the same page, holding them accountable, making sure they're doing it without me, and using me more as a subject matter expert than as relying on me to do, the job for them.
Right. You don't want to be, going through childbirth and then you're on the phone talking with someone at the same time.
Yeah.
But talk about the evolution of the staff, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you first started, it was you. Walk me through kind of the evolution of who were important positions that you hired for, and how you grew that way.
So our intake staff is about 80% of our staff. So our sales floor, the people who answer the phone. And when we first started, it was really a goal to give people an opportunity because I don't have a degree. And so when I came back to Oklahoma, I couldn't even get hired at, Paycom because I didn't have a degree and I had ran a company. And that didn't sit well with me. So I wanted to be able to give opportunities to intake people to make really good money. And so they are our most important staff because they're converting the leads. And so it started with them. We used to pay like 15 an hour. Now they're between 18 and 20, and then they get a bonus structure. So they can make up to $100,000 a year without a formal education for signing up these leads and helping these people. So I'd say the evolution of the staff has always been in the intake and how can we be a better employer. So we have daycare reimbursement now. We have a better healthcare now. Whereas when I first started, I couldn't offer any of that. So I'd say that's the biggest. And then when my husband came on to work with me, he came from a hospital chain and he was in HR and he established the leadership because without our C-suite, if it's just you running the company, then you don't have a company. So it needs to be able to run without you. So I'd say those two points of the company were probably the biggest whenever we established bonus structure and then started giving more back and daycare reimbursement and things like that. And then also bringing on from other fields and ever expertise like our COO and our VP of marketing and intake and things like that.
At what point, Lauren, I don't know if that was a difficult decision or not, that your husband decides to come on to the business? Because I could see a lot of positives. I could see tension also.
Yeah. It was, he saw me working 18 hours a day. And for him, it was, when I get home, you're still not here. And he saw a lot of problems that pretty much what Quintessa does is, hey, let a lawyer be a lawyer. Let me get you the cases. And so his viewpoint was, okay, you're really good at the vision and the marketing. I'm going to let you do this. You don't need to deal with the HR, the day-to-day. So he came in and said, if I can help with this and prove it out, then it'll free you up and you'll do better. And so because I trusted him, if it was anyone else, I probably wouldn't have let them do it. But because it was him, he was able to really show me what I needed to do. And because I had never been in corporate America. And he had. And so he was able to bring some of those systems over.
Was that a slow transition where he's helping you? Because, he's working with big hospital systems. It's like he's helping you and then it's like, you know what, I'm already doing this. Let me join. Or was it just more like quick and let me just hop in and I'm going to start working with you?
So he didn't come over till we were engaged. So that was a big thing. So we met in February of 18 and then we were engaged in April of 19. So everyone knew him at the office. He would come in as more of a consultant and talk to people. But until we got engaged, he didn't come over. And then once he did, then it was, okay, this is going to be our family. I want to be a part of it and make, because the whole point of having your own company too, sometimes is to be able to enjoy the spoils of that. And if he wasn't here working with, then, trying to take off PTO on his end would almost be non-existent. So it was, let's work smarter and get it all done.
It sounds like over the years, you've probably refined also, you've had to hire more and more people and refine the hiring process. Is there any interesting tips you can give on the hiring process itself?
So I would say, personality tests and the quizzes and things like that, like culture index, to me is a absolute must. Anyone can look good in an interview. Anyone can look good on a piece of paper. And, you can pay people to say really great things on references. But to me, when you're in a fast-paced or high-growth company, the question is, who's going to be here after the honeymoon? Who's going to be here after 90 days? Who's still going to be grinding? And so it was investing in people like that and in programs and processes like that Because it also gives you a look at the person like, okay, well, this makes sense of why they're this way or how to deal with them or deal with this conflict resolution. And you get an inside look at the person.
I think Culture Index doesn't take that long also for the person to fill out.
It's like 5 minutes.
Yeah. We were talking before we hit record about how staff responsibilities and staff changes as the company grows, right? And I think I'm maybe butcher the title, Lauren, but it's like what got you here won't get you there. I think Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book of similar title. You were saying how when you grow from 10 million to 20 to 30 and beyond, the staff that you have has to change or they have to change roles. How did you handle some of those? What were some of those inflection points where you saw that the staff that you had to either change or they had to modify what they were doing?
I think with some of our staff, some of our leadership is really where we had to make some adjustments. And they were hard conversations. And some leaders, they didn't end up staying because it was hard for them. And we understood that. But the vision is, hey, listen, if Quintessa is supposed to be going here, then it's all about how do we get Quintessa to this point. And if you buy into the vision, then you're going to understand and shift seats and shift accountability if you need to. So if you don't have a clear vision, and if your people aren't on board with that vision, then you're going to have people who leave or people who aren't bought in. And so when I sat down and had those hard conversations and said, you are fantastic, but I need you in this role now because I need you to not be a Swiss Army knife. I need you to now excel in this one thing because this Swiss Army knife role is too much and you're not shining in the thing that you have expertise in. And so it's like all these plates were dropping. And what's funny is a lot of people initially they took it hard, but then they're so much happier now because now their responsibility is not for 10 different items, it's one. So it sets expectations, sets very clear expectations, and it's allowed us to scale.
What were some of the indicators at the time? Because it's almost like, you put a frog in a pot and you slowly turn up the heat and all of a sudden it's boiling and they don't feel that. So I feel like someone's been in a position for 4 years. What were some of those indicators like, hey, I need to have this hard conversation at that point? What were you seeing?
So you would see different departments just completely plummeting in their numbers, or, we use Traction. So it's an EOS system. And so we were seeing to-dos not being met weekly. We were seeing rocks not being met. And you would be able to look on the accountability chart and see who wasn't meeting their rocks. And then when you would ask them about it, it was very defensive. It's like, well, I was busy doing A, B, C, and D. And so that's when you could tell, okay, you're not doing the 3 to 5 things you're specialized in. You're wearing multiple hats. You're in multiple seats. We've got to course correct really quick.
Yeah, and I want to encourage, we have an episode on the podcast with Gino Wickman, who started Traction, and also Mark Winters, who co-authored with Gino Wickman, Rocket Fuel. And that's kind of what you remind me of. You and your husband is kind of like with Rocket Fuel, you have the visionary and you have the integrator, and that creates that rocket fuel, right? So check those episodes out. I love how you said that. So each of the team has rocks, and it's very measurable, right? Because they're working towards rocks. So you can know, is this getting done or is it not getting done? You give away half your profit.
We do.
Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, it's always a dramatic pause. It is something that first month we ever did it, it was COVID. So now we didn't know that, but I was sitting at Life Church with my husband, and there was someone who was talking about giving. And I've always had a pretty generous heart. That's something that my parents raised me to be. It's just something that's kind of innate in me. But it was never pointed. And there was never a hey, this is the percentage. It was, what did you feel like giving? Right. And more than 10%. And this is what I feel like giving, but there was no rhyme or rhythm. So as I was sitting in this sermon and hearing this guy talking, and seeing how freeing it almost was for him, just saying like, this is just part of my DNA. And I mean, it almost made me break out in hives hearing how much he was giving away. So after that sermon, I sat with Leo, my husband, and I said, hey, I really want to give away. I don't know. Like my mind's spinning at this point, right? The visionary starts talking. And that's when you have 27 ideas and only one's good.
He's
right?
like, slow down. No.
Yeah. And I said, well, what if we gave away half our revenue? He's like, well, you're not a 50% profit, so you can't do that. And I was like, okay, what about the first, money that comes in the first of the month? And so we went back and forth, and he's really good at working with me through my ideas. And he was like, what about, let's take it off of the bottom. Let's talk it off your profit. And I said, okay, what about half our profit? What does that look like? And so this is when we were very small. So this is in February, right as COVID's like kind of starting, but everyone's like, that's not a real virus. This is in China, whatever. And so this was like middle February. So we're like, okay, we're already halfway through the month. We're going to do it in March. So March hits and we start getting phone calls from clients like, hey, we're in LA, we're in New York. We can't even go to the office. We're having to shut down our law firm right now. So I'm losing clients. But I had committed like to my husband and to myself, we're going to give away half our profit. And so we start talking this through, and I am like writing the check end of March. Like, I wish I had like a picture of it because it probably was the worst handwriting just from shaking because I was so nervous because it was so much money and it was money we didn't really have. So it was like a $10,000 check. Turned around, gave it up, and I mailed it in. And I was really just praying for a favor, just for a direction of like, hey, listen, this is my heart. I know you put it in there. I don't want to second guess, but just give me some sort of security here. So I did it. I wrote it. And a couple hours later, I get a call from a California firm saying, hey, I heard that you can produce leads. We're not shutting down. We're sending everyone remote, but our affiliates have shut down because they're in California. So I need to spend $500,000. Can you give me $500,000 worth of leads? And it was a couple hours later after that check. And I don't believe in coincidences. I was like, okay, like I see where you're going here. So after that, it became a part of our DNA of, hey, listen, irrespective of what happens, we're going to give away half our profit. So when we were having really bad months, still gave it away because, it's just bigger than us. Quintessa has to be able to help people and do different things than just make profit and put money in our pockets. And so once we took that stance, it really made a difference.
Lauren, do you choose different causes, or how do you decide how to distribute that?
I do. So we partner with a lot of different charities. So one of the biggest ones is the Bible app. So they want to be able to, pretty much everyone in the world, be able to have access to a Bible in their language. So when I went to a private Christian school, and initially I wanted to go to be in international business and be a missionary. That was what I wanted to do. And so it was really funny seeing how God kind of brought me back to being a part of that and being able to give money, which can do way more than what I could have ever done as a person. So that's one that I'm partnered with Infant Crisis Center. So it's making sure that, in Oklahoma families, they can come 4 times. Each child can come up to 4 times in a year for food, for clothing, just to make sure that they're trying to help out, diapers. And then Remerge is all about taking women with nonviolent crimes who they may have gone through prison or maybe close to going to prison and rehabilitating them and actually teaching them a skill. And so those are things, to me, it's breaking generational curses because, at any point in anyone's life, if my parents were really great, but I've made some poor decisions. And if they weren't there to pick me up, who's to say where I would have ended up? So the goal is, hey, I want to give someone this opportunity and break these curses. And so those are the 3 that we partner with, but there's probably 25 that we give to at any given time.
What's the website for the remerge? Do you know?
I believe I think it's Remerge OKC.
Okay. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's a
That's
pretty, and it's the only one in Oklahoma City that actually does it. So it's pretty amazing. And so we've gotten to hire a couple of, it's remergeok.org, but we've got to hire a couple of people, a couple of women from there. But what's great is she made enough on her first bonus to get her driver's license and to get a car. And she was taking the bus. And so that to me was really cool being able to be a part of that story.
Yeah, that's life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I had a guy on, Dave DeRocher of the Other Side Academy, and it sounds like a similar thing where they have a place where they can, essentially rehab people who have been in and out of the prison system. And he was on the brink of a 29-year prison sentence. He talks about how there were choppers coming down on him at that time. And he now is the executive director of the Other Side Academy. So it was really cool. So I appreciate you sharing that. And people can check out remergeok.org. Your why has changed from when you started till now.
Yes, it has. It's, my why was, to be honest, it was very selfish. It was about me. It was, hey, I need to be able to make X amount per month. I need to take care of my daughter. And I really didn't care how I got there. I don't know if that's
selfish, wanting to take care of yourself and your daughter, but
the thing is, I think when you start a company, you're focused on, unless you're starting a charity or something, focusing on myself. And it was the byproduct of, I didn't care how I got there. I had to be able to do this to take care of. So I think you end up in some poor decision making whenever the focus is just on you. And because it became very personal, like if someone's not hitting goals and it feels like you're wronging your family, right? There was no like Godfather style, things that happened after, but it was really just, hey, that's what I started it for. And now it is, hey, we want to give opportunities to people to be able to make life-changing money here. We want to be able to help people that have been in an accident get with the right attorney. And we want to help the right attorney bring in a lot of cases and be able to add, profit to them. So the goal is, we're really affecting and changing 3 different people's lives at any given time. So yeah, that's our why. That's what's changed.
Lauren, you changed your model and your profit tripled.
I did.
What happened with that?
So in December of 21, the profit, just the model used to be, I would send leads and then an attorney would ask for a refund and then we would grant it. So it used to be a lot of back and forth, a lot of tension. So let's say an attorney said, hey, you should refund this. I'm like, well, by the contract, it's not in there. And it's like, well, you should add it in there. And it was trying to tell an attorney he's wrong, which no one likes to be told that. But then an attorney who fights for a living definitely doesn't.
Right.
So
exactly.
it was a problem. So we saw our profit margin. It really hit the ceiling of complexity because we couldn't scale. It was going like this. And our profit margin would be great one month and horrible the next. And there was no predictability. And so what we did is we took our average of 4 years and said, hey, what's the average refund rate? And then we said, okay, let's take that 35%, which is the number. Let's discount our price. And then let's put it out there. And so that's what we did. And then that's when we got a really large client. And immediately they scaled from like 25,000 a month to over $1 million. And it was because they were able to see the scalability because there was no back and forth. It was all about how do we make numbers better? How do we make metrics better? So we came in at a wholesale price.
So you lowered pricing.
We did.
And did you get pushback?
Yes. So all of my team really thought this was just going to plummet us because they were seeing the profit margin and seeing that it was thin. And they were, and anyone would be this way, looking at it saying, okay, so I just want to make sure you're clear. We're barely profiting and you want to lower your price and you're thinking you're going to profit more. No, like that, you're going to have to get all new clients. How are you going to get them? And I said, guys, let's just look, let's just watch, let's try it. And so we tried it with a few, and then they were happy. And now some of our other clients who were getting 70% refunds, whenever I told them we were changing the model, they were very upset. And so we lost some and they came back. Some of them did. But it's also, I just explained to them the model's broken, and it can't be that you're making a ton of money and we're making or losing money. We can't do it. It has to be a partnership. So it reframed the entire Quintessa to say, we're a partner, we're not your marketer. So if you're looking for a marketer, go buy leads. But if you want a partner to help develop processes and help your people and to make sure and really identify a problem and get a solution, then come to us. And that's what we're here for.
So, Lauren, what you did was you lowered pricing, but you also changed the terms a little bit. So people couldn't refund off of leads you were sending. And were they paying a set amount every month then?
So what they were doing, it was deducted at a per lead price. So let's say, for instance, in a market, they were paying $1,600 for a motor vehicle accident and then $5,000 for a commercial with a commercial policy. And then we lowered the price to like $1,100 for a motor vehicle and $3,000 for a commercial, but there were no refunds. And but because it was lower, it allowed them to look at it more holistically as opposed to one by one or lead by lead.
Got it. And so, yeah, if they have if they average out over 100 people, then it makes sense. Like if you look at an individual basis, it's a little painful if like, well, that person didn't work out and we paid for it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. And so what we look at and what our people coach to every week when they're talking to them is, hey, what's your conversion rate and what's your CPA? What is your cost per acquisition? Are you hitting your numbers? And if it is, then let's not get into the nitty gritty. Let's look at the big picture.
What you do is really tough in a sense that you only control certain things and you may get blamed for things you don't control. Okay.
Yes.
And, which I mentioned, right? You do. So what do you do to kind of shore that up with the company? We talked about the intake department and development and training. Talk about the challenges and mistakes people make with that you maybe go into and help shore up, because you're going to get blamed for it, I imagine.
Yes. So we actually just had something happen last month where we had a client on the West Coast sending a lot of leads over, great leads. Cost per acquisition was really good, but it was falling out in their intake process. Well, when we started digging into it and looking at live transfers and looking at what was going on, we were seeing that they weren't able to complete their side of the intake, which is a more in-depth version of what we do. And they weren't able to get the client on the phone. So we had to reconnect a bunch of people over there. But then what I also asked was, I said, give me your questions. Like, I want to see your questions, because let's say it takes me 5 more minutes to get their questions answered while I'm on the phone, but it ensures them being able to scale to over $1 million a month. Well, I'm going to spend an extra 5 minutes on each one of the leads I send them. And in the type A in me, I'm like, I want to be able to take out of their hands and control everything that I can, that I know we're good at or that we're already doing. And we have a 65% intake staff. So it just makes more sense. So that's one thing we're adding on to our model and not charging. That's a partner, and that's how we want to do it. We want to be able to be the best that we can for them so they can scale.
What are the mistakes people are making, law firms making with the intake process? And maybe not just law firms, but other companies.
I think performance bonus is, to me, the biggest thing. So hiring the right people and then making sure they're incentivized and held to a culture of accountability. So if you have someone coming in late every single day, not hitting quota, they are just dragging you down and your team down, and they're going to be a cancer. So I think it's being able to hire slow and fire fast. But then it's also giving back to your employees. So we end up in our intake floor bonusing sometimes up to 50 grand in a month. But I mean, when you see how much ROI they've produced, they should. And we have no problem writing that check every month. So I'm waiting for the day I write a 10 grand check to one intake. It still hasn't happened yet. That's the challenge right now on the floor. But I'd say implementing those bonus structures are big.
It's interesting you say that, because that was not the answer I was expecting. it goes back to people. I was expecting more of a process
Mm-hmm.
answer, but starting with the people, the hiring, and the right people, and then incentivizing those people.
Mm-hmm. I'd say, I mean, our processes are clean, but if you don't have the right people, then your processes don't matter because they can't even get past the first 30 seconds of the phone call. So you will have no cases. So the processes don't matter after that. Because you can't really teach tone, right? You can't really correct salespeople. So you have to be
Yeah.
able to motivate them.
How do you have a hard conversation with the company you're working with? Because you may find, hey, you know that person that's been working for you for 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
They aren't performing. They aren't
Mm-hmm.
doing a good job on the intakes. How do you approach that with them?
Well, so what I look at it in is again try to look at it on a holistic approach. So if their team as a whole is really good and they're a great partner, but let's say we keep getting complaints from one person. So what I'm doing is I'm emailing a head attorney and I'm saying, hey, listen, I had 5 cases. Here's my valuation of these 5 cases. These 5 cases were handled by this intake rep, and this intake rep fumbled the ball on 4. So your ROI is lost from this person.
Mm.
And this is what was said on the call. This is what was done. And if it would have been handled by your other intake rep, John Doe, who handles this all the time, you wouldn't have lost these cases, which you're losing ROI on that because you have to pay for the leads. And so it's in a very not personal,
It's very
just
objective. It's a
it
very
is.
objective, factual, here's what we're seeing. And it's not a judgment or it's not a subjective thing. You're bringing up objective measurements.
Well, and if you listen to our call center, you may, someone has a bad day, right? They broke up with their boyfriend last night. They have a bad tone, but you have to have procedures in place to be able to watch that. So like for us, if we're not hitting a certain conversion rates, we pull people off the phone and we put them on rounds because we just say, hey, today's not your day. And that's okay. We're going to listen to it, give you feedback on it. But, you get to a certain point. If you're not hitting conversion rates, then you're off.
You mentioned you changed your model a little bit with the pricing, but your model is different from a lot of the agencies in general that I've seen. So what made you decide to really handle everything, take the intake in-house and charge per lead as opposed to, hey, we're just going to do a flat fee and just send them all your way?
Mm-hmm. So I had done, the TV commercials, but then I also started our SEO division. And then when I started the SEO division for attorneys, we started listening to phone calls because we would see their clicks go up, their calls go up, but the cases not go up as much. And that's whenever I started to see, they were paying their intake reps minimum wage to handle a possible, $1 million case. Made no sense to me. It just seemed very backwards. So I was actually 30th birthday with my best friend at the Quintessa winery. That's why it's named Quintessa. So I was at the Quintessa winery in Sonoma when I decided to start my company. And so I was, I guess all good thoughts, all good ideas come after a glass of wine. So day drinking at 10 a.m., wine tasting. I look over at her and we're hearing about the processes of Quintessa and how he threw out like his first 5 or 6 batches of wine because they weren't to his par. And so he would refine his processes and refine everything that he went around. And when he put it out, it was triple the price of most any other wine bottle. And so I'm sitting here hearing that story, wine induced from the Quintessa. And I look over at her and I said, hey, I'm going to start my own company. And she was like, okay, let's go eat a burger because we've been, wine tasting at from 9 to 11 with no food. And let's really talk this through. And so it was, I know I can do better. It was I'm a problem solver. I'm looking out. I'm seeing what I've done over the years. What is something I'm innately good at? And how can I help people? And that was really the evolution of it.
No, I love that, Lauren. The more you can take off of a client's plate to make it easier for them, the better. We talked about, I want to, really dig deeper into what you do. And so people can understand, there was a PI law firm across the US. And what were some of the things that you did with them? And they also had to, when they were expanding too.
Yeah. So one of the PI law firms that we work with, they are, their goal is to grow. And so one thing that Quintessa's enabled law firms to do, especially this one, is if you go into a new market, a lot of times you have to sign a year lease, you have to buy a building, you have to find people. And that takes a lot of time here. You're building your own business again. So let's say it's 6 to 9 months, and then you have to start filling the pipeline. So you could be close to $500,000 to $1 million in with no ROI, no cases. And so what we are able to do is go into a market because we don't advertise their brand and we advertise our own, to where in 24 hours, they're getting in leads that are converting into cases for them so they can start filling their pipeline and filling with people at the same time. And so it's allowed the scalability model for them to where they already have the ROI proven out and they know how the model is before they start hiring a ton of people or buying a building. So we brought them into a really large state. And when we did that, they were flooded with over 200 cases. And they had to just hire a ton of people, but they wouldn't have had that opportunity unless they went with Quintessa.
What are some things that are working today in terms of getting leads? This could not just be in law firms, but it could obviously expand across other markets too.
What I'd say is anyone can advertise. It's really, to me, who answers the phone. So we're on every platform. So we're on Google, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook and Instagram. But to me, it's who's answering the phone, how are they handling it, what's your follow-up process? That to me is really core in processes. Everyone's had a horrible customer service experience, and then everyone's had a really good one. And so I'd say, you can spend a lot of money on a lot of different channels, but if you don't have your back end handled, it won't matter how much you spend.
Yeah. Lauren, I have one last question. Before I ask it, I want to point people to learn more. They can check out quintessamarketing.com to learn more. I don't know if there's any other places online we should have people check out.
No, that's it right now. That's where everything is.
I'd love to hear resources. It could be books, it could be software that you love. We mentioned Traction. What are some of the resources, books, or software that you like to use in your team?
So I listen to Pastor Craig Rochelle's his leadership podcast a lot. So he's been a really good asset for me because he has a lot of different leaders, kind of like you, on these different ones. So I love listening to him. Traction for us has been big. Rocket Fuel's been really big because then you're not taking on the world by yourself. And I would say any type of accountability software that you can come up with to keep your goals in line, that's a really big thing. So I'd say those are probably my go-tos. Anyone that has a leadership, what I think what we look at is the new book comes out. I love reading it, and you can always take one nugget of wisdom. And if you can get one thing from it, then it's worth it.
Awesome. Lauren, remember the first one to thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey, your story. It's been a winding road, and really appreciate it. Everyone check out more episodes of the podcast and Quintessa Marketing. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.